Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bourbon Note. I'm Greg.
I'm Ben.
And today, Ben, I don't even know what's going on today. It's been a while since we've filmed, so what are we doing today?
I think we're drinking bourbon.
Oh, that's my line. All right, Ben, I can see the bottle over there, and I know this bottle. I see it
Everyone knows this
Everyone
bottle.
knows it.
Sometimes you just have to go back to the classics. Bam, this is Elijah Craig Small Batch. Well, sometimes, like I said, you just have to go back to the classics.
And this is, you're saying, is a classic.
I think it is, yeah. This is kind of a staple bourbon that I think is part of everyone's kind of bourbon journey, if you will.
So this is Heaven Hill, a pretty big distillery most people have heard of.
Yep, and this is a bottle that...
I don't know if it's their
available.
#1 brand. I mean, they have several really good lines. Right.
But this one's available everywhere.
Yep.
And, this review may be geared a bit more towards beginners, but we'd like to do those videos.
Sure.
And sometimes when you pick up a classic bottle, you got to do a review of a classic bottle. And so I picked this up just to have this as a weekend sipper.
Yep. So I have thoughts, but let's get into the actual bourbon, and then we can talk more about our philosophy.
Sure.
At the end.
A nutty Heaven Hill nose for sure.
It's definitely like a rich caramel, though. There's a nice sweetness that comes through.
And a bit of oak too. This is has a little bit of the, just kind of a nice balance of a few different quintessential bourbon flavors.
To jump to the punchline at the end, this is a bourbon that punches above its weight. Like if you compare quality and versus price.
I think it does too, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good choice.
Let's get into the palate here. Cheers. Just a nice, sweet, well-rounded bourbon.
It's got more red pepper flake kind of note today than...
A little spice?
Although, every day is different, depending on what you've just recently eaten.
Yeah, this has... it has some nice oak spice to it. Mm-hmm. I think this runs around 8 years, I believe Heaven Hill says.
Which is amazing for a everyday.
Yeah, it usually runs around the 30-ish.
30-ish,
sometimes,
32.
Yeah, sometimes you get it for in the 20s. But the flavor profile on this is kind of a down-the-middle bourbon, but I think it's, like you said, punches a little bit above its weight in that category.
I think the age is what shows up.
Yeah.
You get the real interesting, complex wood sugars.
Yep.
It spent some quality time in the oak.
At 94 proof, I think this is definitely, how I was saying, it's kind of part of everyone's bourbon journey. As you're getting into bourbon, and like I said, this video may be geared a bit more towards beginners, which is great, because when I first got into bourbon, that's what I was looking for, is these readily available, less expensive ones to find out if they're any good, if they're worth buying.
Totally agree.
And this certainly is, and that's why we wanted to review it. But at the 94, if you're working your way up that proof ladder, you usually when you get into whiskey, you kind of start at the lower proof stuff because you're not quite acclimated to the higher proof. Mm-hmm. And as you're trying to work your way up to the 100 proof area, this is a great stop along the way.
Yep.
Because it's kind of a midpoint. Like there's a lot of 90 proofers, there's a lot of 100 proofers, and this is a good middle ground for that.
But this is another one that we've said a number of times on the channel that sometimes usually whiskey needs something. It either needs extra age, because if it's like a 3-year, it's hard for it to be good. It can be, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Or it needs higher proof.
Yep.
And it's easier to find higher proof, like that's pretty easy to see although they're sometimes expensive, but longer age is another way to really add complexity to a whiskey.
And around that 8 years is a great age
so.
for bourbon.
Yeah.
Speaking of the proof again, the reason I bought this is because I wanted something lower than 100 proof that tastes really good, that I enjoy just sipping neat, to have as, like I said, kind of my weekend sipper. You can make a cocktail out of it or, sip it neat. And I kind of had depleted a lot of my sub 100 proof bottles, and it's like, you know, I love the cask strength stuff, but if you want to sit and hang out with your friends and have a couple of drinks, 120 proofer is maybe not the way to go unless you want a really short evening. And so this is what I'll be drinking tonight. You know,
Nice.
it's a Saturday, and we probably hang out in the garage and have a couple drinks, and I bought this as a good solid go-to for that.
Nice.
And I think that's what this bottle is. It's just a good, solid, reliable. I've gone on vacations and brought this with.
Not this exact bottle we just opened it, but
Yeah, I went to an all-inclusive, and I knew that they weren't going to have...
anything quality.
Yeah, they were going to have like 2 bourbons, and that's it. And they were going to be like Jim Beam White Label and maybe Evan Williams. It's a little too low a proof for me, but I purposely brought this one because it's not too high a proof. And after a day of hanging out at the pool, having cocktails, and I want to go back and have a cigar on the porch and have a nice pour of whiskey, also maybe not the best time to throw down 120 proofer.
Yeah.
So this is just a great versatile utility bourbon. And it's a small batch product. I don't know how big the batches
They're
are.
fairly big, I think.
I think they are, but I do think that you can get some variance.
They vary a little, definitely.
From batch to batch. Not a whole lot, not as much as like a single barrel, of course, but yeah, I mean, if you're just getting into bourbon or if you're trying to explore some different brands and you haven't had this one, I think this is an absolute must.
So I just went on a work trip, and somebody came up and asked me some questions because he knew I'm into bourbon. And he mentioned that he has a couple of like the unicorns or mid-range unicorns, and he's hunting other unicorns. I said, you know, honestly, you know, take several steps down in price.
Yeah.
And do a real good comparison of a younger age versus an older age, and a lower proof versus higher proof, and get an idea of what you like.
Exactly. Get an idea of what you like.
And do that at a lower price point, because unless you're you know infinitely wealthy.
Yeah, and I think the mistake a lot of people make when they first get into it is that they think price
Equals
quality, and it doesn't always.
it's-
Sometimes, you know, you're paying that price because you're getting a very well-aged or a high-proof one. So there is something to be said there, but there's a lot of bourbons that are priced high and just definitely not worth it.
And on this channel, we found a number of bourbons that we say punch above their weight, meaning their price is better than where a lot of their competitors.
Yep.
And they do compete with those higher shelf bourbons, and this
Sure.
is absolutely one of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a well-rounded. This was on my list of top 5 bourbons for beginners.
Yep.
You said experiment and find out what you like. If you're just getting into bourbon, this is a great one to add to a maybe 5-bottle collection, and that's why we did that video, top 5 for beginners,
Sure.
where you can get a few different products that have a different flavor profile without having to spend too much money, and that aren't too high a proof for someone who's a beginner and is not into that. And this is perfect for that as well, to experiment with and find out what you like, so you can kind of, you know, maybe go down the Heaven Hill line if you like this.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just an all-around fantastic $30 bottle. Anything else?
I think it's great.
Perfect. All right, well, this has been Elijah Craig Small Batch on the Bourbon Note. I'm Ben.
I'm Greg. Till next time. See you next time.